Okay, random notes. Advertising is to focus on why they, the person you're advertising to, should want the thing that you're trying to get them to get, buy in, or jump on board for, whether it's an interview, a investor pitch, presentation, product, service, relationship prospect, and not why or how much you want them to join in on it and why you would benefit from them accepting your offer. I can't really, I don't really, so this is just a comment. I don't actually know if I can point out like the common mistakes with this. Maybe maybe like in an interview where you just say things like, I'm very passionate about this job, or I would really like this job because, I mean, obviously that's relevant, but it's definitely a lot less important compared to what you are ready to do, right? I guess. Which I guess works for relationships too. Okay. I mean, obviously, like when you say that, like you're implying that you're willing to do more if you get it, but I guess part of it also implies that you didn't prepare as much before, as if you're only going to do the preparation, the things that would make you better for that position if you get the position already. I think would be the biggest flaw here in terms of the detriment. Okay. Passion must be paired with logic and emotion with thought. Passion must be paired with logic, and emotion must be paired with thought. Feelings must be questioned and not chased empty-mindedly. Right. So this is a bit, less common. But if you think about it, the most tragic relationships is when you just follow your feelings blindly, or the most tragic habits are when you just follow the habit you built. I'll give you an example. So this an example I've mentioned before because reusing examples are the most effective way I think to make points easier to understand. Is I guess it's like with a donut, right? If you your if you wire your brain such that when you feel stressed, you learned that to make the stress go away, which doesn't make the problem go away, but it makes the stress go away. Eating the donut will make the stress go away, and you feel better. So you create that, and so the other, like, you can think about this in terms of like toxic relationships or ones where they keep breaking up and going back, or maybe a career path that doesn't treat them well, or maybe even a job that doesn't treat them well, and they could just follow the same industry or field in a different job, or I don't know, or maybe if they're impulsive because they think that they feel it'll make them feel good or it'll help them avoid feeling bad, just in general, right? So it's like if you just follow all of these signals and habits and patterns that your body has now blindly, it's not actually going to be effective, which is weird if you think about it. But I mean, if you think about it, the human body should work out if you do that, because that's what we evolved for. But the thing is that the world is different now. The world is very different from what we evolved for, so we do need to do things differently. And this is a bit unrelated, but I'll give you a simple example. And this goes back to what happens when you remove the barrier of entry to having a voice. It's a bit similar. So when you make something so too accessible, you will introduce people who probably shouldn't be doing it to try it and experience it more, because they haven't really broken down whether or not it's good for them, because it's so easy. When something is less accessible, they'll look at what is required to get it, or get in it, or join the group, or join this program, or whatever it is, and assess whether or not it's worth it. And I'll give you an example. This one is not the best example, because it was said in a context which I don't really want to purport in this context of the conversation, but this is just one example. It was someone talking about finances, and he was talking about how the government made it so that everybody could get into university, and that they would, if they couldn't afford it, the government would help pay for it. Now, why is this a problem? It's not a problem that people get education. The problem is that now universities are like, okay, well, that means we can hike up the prices because the students are still going to pay for it, or the government will pay for it, but the students are the ones who are going to be in debt anyway. So either way, the university gets the money, even if they hike up the prices, because the students are still going to go. So now the students who are basically taught to go to university now, are going to do it regardless of whether or not the student debt is going to be an optimal life plan and match their increased income. And then because everybody has a degree, it's not actually going to be worth anything. The playing field is still going to be level, as if nobody had a degree. It doesn't actually put you up there with the people who used to have a degree. It just puts you up there with the people who also didn't have degrees before, and now you're all in debt. Of course, if you work hard enough, you can transcend that, I suppose, but also depends. I mean, it depends on where you live, really. But in the context this was spoken, it was talking about America, and the student debts there, based on what I hear at least, are pretty brutal. Or I'll give you another example. If you have alcohol, if alcohol is very easily accessible, for example, then you're going to have more people who probably shouldn't be drinking it drink it. If guns are too easily accessible, now I'm not gonna talk about gun laws banning guns or anything, but like if you don't need verification that you have, for example, no mental issues or depression or any of those. I don't actually know the laws, by the way. Maybe you do need these verifications. This is just an example. It's if that was the case, then you are more likely to see people getting shot or suicides, perhaps. Because also the accessibility of suicide. Now, let's say everybody had guns. Then people are going to be more likely to suicide in the situation. Let's think of it this way. In a world where every single person has a gun, then when people think of killing themselves, the activation energy required to go from the thinking about killing themselves to actually doing it is lower. It's a lower barrier of entry. Now, I know this is a horrible topic, but if you actually think about it mathematically, it is a lot easier to kill yourself by pulling a trigger if you had a gun versus if you don't. Like, if I were to tell, just hypothetically, I'm not telling you to actually consider killing yourself, but if you wanted to kill yourself, how would you do it? Well, and if you didn't have a gun versus if you did, the difficulty level, hurdle, is much higher. So I think in a world where nobody had guns, the suicide rate would be lower. Anyways, my point isn't that America should ban guns. No. And I'll give you some more examples. Let's say if you wanted, if you went into a clinic and said, I want to, I'm considering transitioning my gender, so I want some hormones to try it out, right? Now, I'm not saying that clinics shouldn't, I'm not making any statements about what should or should not be done. I'm not suggesting anything regarding politics or legalizations here. I'm just talking about hypothetical worlds and subsequent facts relative to my point of topic. Okay, so let's say you say that, and the requirements are you go through a series of therapy or whatever that analyzes your brain state, what you are experiencing, what the best solutions are, why you're experiencing it, why you want this solution, and so on. Um, try to treat your cases, and so on and so forth. And then they go, okay, we think this is the best option for you. Versus if they go, okay, sure, this is $30 or whatever you can buy. Now, am I saying you should be able to make your own choices or not? I mean, well, first of all, my personal opinion is that it should depend on your age. I don't know what age that would be, but I think it should depend on your age. But here, the only claim I'm actually making is that in the second situation, where it is completely your choice, irrelevant of your age, so you have personal sovereignty, regardless of age, in a case where it's much easier to access options, you're going to have more cases where people are going to be uneducated on whether that option is actually ideal for them. Now, should we simply allow people to make ignorant choices? I mean, I don't have a logical reason why not. There's two sides of the argument here, and I don't really want, I do have an opinion, but I'm not trying to purport mine here. I'm just trying to lay out things that I think are objective. Okay, so opinion one, side one, which is everybody should be allowed to make their own decisions, and side two, which is people should make educated decisions. And so it's like, why do we not allow people to drink when they're too young or drive when they're too young? It's mostly because they can harm people around them, I suppose. So the hormone replacement, transition, whatever, they can do that, and it doesn't really affect the people around them. That being said, there's also a reason that parents have authority over their children before a certain age, because it is much more, because society would probably collapse, right, if kids had more right to more personal authority than their parents. Other things would be maybe access to things like TikTok, social media. We can see how people who have who use certain social medias in certain ways to an excess degree have serious psychological issues as a result. That can be compared to alcohol in some ways, I suppose, or other forms. There's cyberbullying, which is also a thing, but I don't think that one's as quite the same, because because you can see that kind of they can just do the bullying in real life, probably. I don't know. I'm not educated on this one at all. I don't even know what I'm trying to say anymore. Oh, right. Barrier of entry being too low introduces less educated people into making bad decisions. That's basically it. But also, aside from that, it also introduces a worse environment in terms of the community. And I'll give you a different example here. Let's say you had a room where anybody could enter with a microphone and say whatever they wanted. Or let's say you had the room where there would be one microphone and you would pay because you knew who it was that was going to speak, and if you want to listen to that person speak, you go into the room. Which one is more likely to provide information that people should hear, that people want to hear, and which one is more likely to be chaotic and have a very disharmonious environment and potentially grow violent over time? Right? So, anyways. My point is just this. If some things become too easy to try, do, participate in, partake in, join in, you're going to have a lot of people who are going to be either speaking up for or against it that probably shouldn't be. You're going to have a lot of people who are going to not benefit from it as much as they expect. You're going to have a lot more people who are angry. You're going to have a lot more chaos. And you're probably going to have worse results from those people on average. Now here's the flip side of this statement. It is if the accessibility is restricted, I guess that can be interpreted as, discrimination, elitism, classism, or whatever it is that you choose to view it as. But I think of it differently. Like, think of it this way. Let's say you liked to play chess, and there was a chess club that costed, say, $30 a month, or a chess club that was just out in the open air in front of a coffee shop and anybody could listen. Now here's the thing. I'm not saying that all chess clubs should cost $30 a month. I'm just saying the environment would be different, and you would just simply have more people who aren't actually interested in it, who may affect your experience. That's all I'm saying. Now, me, I do like chess, but I don't go to chess clubs. So that's what it is. You can replace chess with anything. It's just an example. It's just a scenario. Okay. Okay, that took a really... How long? I've been rambling on myself about this topic. And I feel like the problem with this is, I feel like anything I say about this could easily be misunderstood. And it's very difficult. Because I'm actually, I'm doing this for myself, of course. And it's a practice in speaking so that I won't be misunderstood. But it's very difficult to do that, because I feel like it sounds very wrong even when I hear it, right? It's like, I feel like I'm almost misunderstanding myself. So this is very difficult. And I kind of hate it, because the biggest issue is that I'm not too clear on it myself either. I'm just having thoughts as I go. And I kind of hate my examples, because I think my examples can be pretty easily misconstrued. I guess the good thing is that I'm not actually a big content creator or anything. I'm just I'm just talking to myself, really. I really would have to script it very carefully if I were actually speaking to an audience. Anyways, fix in yourself what you want to fix in others. So this is difficult, right? Because when you see other people do things that make you angry, you don't want to believe that it's in any way reflective of things you do that make you dissatisfied or ashamed. But let's set aside anger, because that's the thorniest flower of the bunch. Let's look at things where you look at someone who is unhappy or miserable or depressed or doesn't have his life together, or maybe who's someone who has problems that you used to have or that you have now, or ways that are similar, and you go, why don't you do this, why don't you do that, why don't you do this, that? And the first thing is to redirect those to yourself. And it's difficult. It is, because if I guess this goes back to what I mentioned. This was pretty similar to a previous entry that I talked about, which is where you talk to yourself in that way, where you separate yourself, like you're the parent, you're the friend, you're the son, you're the son-in-law, you're the boyfriend, etc. Where you talk to yourself as the two perspectives of that role. Like you are your son, you are your father, you are your, well, you can't really say your boyfriend, but I mean, I guess that could work if you were gay. But you get the idea. If you were your son-in-law, if you were your father-in-law, you think about both of these dynamics, because you're going to extend those dynamics to others, but more importantly, you're going to play that role at some point. So if you, with full understanding of yourself and the other party, so if you play the role of the father and the son, for example, you understand what the father would think and want of the son, and the father would understand what the son would think and want of the father. And if you can't act in a way where you would be happy with yourself as the father, or a way in which you would be happy with yourself as a son, you're neither going to be a good son or a good father, right? Which is why I think I am neither a good son or a good father, because I haven't really, I mean, I'm working on it, that's what I'm trying to improve, but I say these things because the things I say are the things I try to learn. So I'm teaching, quote unquote teaching, the way I would teach myself. So this is really an exercise of teaching myself. Anyways, you get the idea. So in this situation, it would be when you see other people who have similar issues as you, and whatever advice it is you want to give them, it is also advice you should give yourself. Which is why questions like, what advice would you give to yourself from 10 years ago or something, are so popular for, say, celebrities or people who have stories that are attractive. Okay. We must hate about the world the parts in which we most hate about the world, the parts in which show us our own weaknesses. When people face trials, they fight for their lives with frustration and a stifling feeling. When people face mirrors, however, they want to lash out and shatter it. On average, the world will return what we put out. The world is a mirror. So this is just an extension of the previous one, really. Anyways. So I wrote an addendum, which is I lived a lazy life, I lived life in a lazy way and got results reflective of someone who lived in a lazy way. Hearing something a dozen times and only understanding when it solves a problem you're currently having. This is just a comment about a feeling. So the subtitle for this section of the book was 12 things or whatever, or 20, I can't remember the number. 12 feelings we don't have a word for in English. And one of them was hearing something a dozen times and only understanding when it solves a problem you're having. So here's the idea. I'm trying to fill myself with things I hear so that when I come across a problem that it would solve, I already have the answer, and so I would be able to solve it much quicker. That's the idea, right? Rather than a case where if you hear something a dozen times, ignore it because you feel that you will never face the problem, go through with the entire problem, eventually solve it, and then reflect and go, oh wait, I already heard about the solution. Now it's hearing something a dozen times, knowing that you will face this problem, and then when you face the problem, you think back and go, oh, I already know the solution, and then solving it, right? It's like, I'm trying to change from the previous one to the latter one, because before I lived like the first one, and now I'm trying to live like the second one. Okay. Here's the thing about identity. We value our mind's perspective so much, we would give up the opportunity to switch experiences, like complete experiences, like with someone else that is probably a bit better. Like if you just traded brains with someone, like you put your brain into someone else's life, most, like, there's not that many people you would actually consider doing it with. Like, they would have to be so much more than you, probably. And then you, or not even that, but like there's basically it's like we value identity, free will, and personal existence so much that if you say, would you rather live their life, most of the time you would say no. Or I guess maybe you would say yes to their life, but you wouldn't say yes to, say, if you were to transform your brain to think like he did and gain his way of thinking, because you would feel that you're losing your identity. So, and what makes you you? Because you would then be him or her. So you can look at someone's life and go, I wish I had the things he had. I wish I had the house he had. I wish I had the career he had. I wish I had the experiences he had. I wish I had the lessons he had. I wish I had the skill set he had. But you wouldn't wish you had the thoughts he had, because then you wouldn't be you. And that's not a bad thing. I think that's something you should value. It's good to remind yourself that you, even if you feel like you're not satisfied with some of the things you do or have or worked for, you should value that you are you, because you wouldn't give that up for just about anything. Like, you can consider having someone else's life, but you wouldn't consider having someone else's brain. I mean, you can be jealous of someone else's intelligence or ability to process things, but you wouldn't want to adopt everything they believe and, like, just lose everything you believe. Like, you would lose everything that, every way in which you think differently from them. Like, you would literally be them, not you. And the idea of that makes you feel a sense of loss. And so you should value that uniqueness that you wouldn't give up in the times when you aren't even faced with the potential of losing it. And this isn't about mortality. It is about, I guess, appreciating things that we do have. Because a lot of the time, you only appreciate things if you would lose them. And this is something you can't really lose. But the idea of losing it horrifies you. And so, when you feel that you don't like the way you act, or don't like the way you think, or don't like the way you do things, I think this is something good to think back and appreciate. Okay. And now I will read you the note that made me go on that tangent. Would you rather regress, as in, I don't know if you've read the stories, but basically go back in time when you were, say, 6 or whatever, and live your life over again? A lot of people think about life with redos. What if I could restart? I would do this differently. I would do that differently. But here's the thing. Would you rather regress with your assets, your money, your degrees, your everything external, everything that you've accumulated outside of you? Or would you regress with everything you've accumulated inside of you? Your brain, your thoughts, your worldview, your memories, your knowledge. And this would exclude things like lottery numbers, stock market changes, the direction of the world. It would simply be a frame of mind, the way you think, your personal life experiences, the lessons you've learned. So you can't take advantage of this to, say, get rich quick by knowing crypto goes up or whatever. Like, just your new worldview that's changed. And most people, I think I can't imagine how few people would pick the assets, the degrees, the house, or whatever. I think everybody, almost every single person, would choose their mind. Maybe if maybe not if they lived like the worst life and they were completely traumatic and everything was traumatic. But here's the thing. Unless you've genuinely accumulated things that would completely prevent all of those traumas, if you go back without any new experience, you would live in the same environment, you would live the same life. So here's the thing. Here's the point. If it is what is inside that we most fear losing, that we most value keeping, that we most want if we were to regress, why is it that we live as if our future self would choose everything external? Because everything we work to accumulate is external for our future self. When our future self would also choose to keep what we gain internally over this period of time rather than what we gain externally. Rather than the wealth we accumulate, we value the lessons we learned. So, and yet we focus on accumulating wealth over lessons for our future self. We pursue not what we find valuable if we were to go back in time for our future self, but we pursue what we find less valuable for our future self if we were to go back in time today. It is incredibly contradictory if you think about it. Okay. I don't remember which book it was that made me write this note, by the way. This is obviously not original. This is just notes. And I will cover the next note as well, even though we've gone pretty long, because it's related to the previous one. We live protecting what we think we have with our life, while never appreciating it and wanting things we don't have as if we would appreciate those things. If we are the same person as we would be when we obtained that thing, why would that assumption be true? Now this is a bit of a linguistic jump of me trying to express the thought. It's not very clear. The only reason I understand it is because I wrote it. But basically, there are things that we think we have. And having them only makes us want to protect them because we fear losing them and not because we love the experience of having them. We don't go around every day, we don't walk into our room every day going, what a beautiful room. But we look at new rooms we may want in the future saying this is a beautiful room, as if when we have it, we will walk into it every day calling it a beautiful room. Or you can say this with anything else, but basically we have things and we fear losing them, similar to the monkeys and the rage they felt when they saw that their juice might be demoted with the fruit or whatever it was, the celery. I can't remember what it was. But they didn't appreciate the juice every day, even though when they first got the juice, they were very excited at the prospect of the juice. So, basically, if you want happiness when you obtain new things, it's not going to be because you have new things, but it's going to be because the person you are at that time is going to be someone who appreciates the things he have and genuinely enjoys having the things he already has. And so, in order for you to reach that type of happiness, you must first become that person and secondarily obtain new things. Because we chase new things as if we will gain happiness from our constant appreciation of it. But first we must be able to have constant appreciation. We must have the capacity to feel constant appreciation for the things we have, for us to gain that constant appreciation when we have new things, which we would already have before we could have the new things. It would be completely separate of the things that we get. I don't practice this. All of this is just me trying to learn for myself. I'm not preaching. I'm not the things that I am. But I'm preaching to myself things that I want to be.